I was hoping to ask you about a government memo leaked earlier this week laying out how you and your government plan to invoke the notwithstanding clause to block any legal challenges against your 3 laws dealing with transgender youth. And just for our listeners, just for clarity, these laws generally deal with banning transgender women from participating in women's sports and institutions, banning pronouns or name changes without parental consent for students under 15, and banning gender-affirming care, so hormones and surgery for minors. The older teens would need a series of permissions, right? And then opt-in sex education. And just why do you feel the need to use the withstanding clause here?
Well, it's a leaked memo, which tells you that there's somebody within the administration that doesn't like the fact that we're having that conversation. And so they've leaked it to the press so that we can have the conversation in public before we've had it at cabinet or at caucus. And so we haven't had the decision.
So you might not do it.
Well, I will say we're having the discussion because we have to consider that an injunction was granted pending it going through all the different levels of litigation. And my preference is to go to court to litigate it because I think we can make a very strong case under Section 1 of the Charter, which is you can do things with reasonable limits. If you've got evidence base and you're able to argue from that basis that you're taking a reasonable measure, I believe that the courts will side with us. But we have to ask the question of how much harm comes to children who are sterilized over the next 3 or 4 or 5 years if we don't act. Because let's be frank about what it is. When you give puberty blockers to a child who's not gone through puberty, they don't become sexually mature, which means they can't have children. And we just happen to be of the view that those are decisions that are made when you're grown up. And so you can start making those decisions at 16, but you can't make those decisions by 10. And you shouldn't have anyone other than that person able to make a decision that is that important to their life path.
The notwithstanding clause was intended to be used, as I understand it, sparingly in emergencies or a last resort, essentially. And as you know, the Supreme Court is now being asked to weigh into how it is being used in relation to Quebec's religious symbols law. And do you think that this is what it was designed for?
Yeah, I think it's exactly what it was designed for, because we have a difference of opinion about this issue. And we have lots of situations where 10-year-olds are restricted in their decisions. We don't allow them to drink, do drugs, sign contracts, join an army, work. And so for us to now say, well, we'll make an exception and they can sterilize themselves with the permission of their parents and the permission of a doctor, I just think that's at odds with how we treat 10-year-olds and children who are 15 years of age and under. Now, we treat children who are 16 years of age and older differently because we recognize that there's a maturity level and they can take on more and more adult decisions, not the complete range. They don't get to make the complete range of adult decisions until 18. Mm-hmm. But I think that there's a difference of opinion on this. And when you have a difference of opinion, then you litigate it out. But in the end, I believe in parliamentary supremacy. And that means that politicians do get to have the final say.
Just one of the moral arguments against this is that many people in the medical community argue that restrictions on gender-affirming care or on pronouns may lead to worse mental health outcomes for trans youth, that delaying or denying this kind of care could cause distress, dysphoria, risk of self-harm, like suicide. And I know that some of the parents of trans youth have come out already to say that they worry that these laws will interfere with treatment that their children need for their own mental health. And what would you say to those parents?
There's lots of doctors who take the idea of watchful waiting, that there are lots of issues that kids are going through when they go through puberty. Their bodies are changing. They may have same-sex attraction. They may feel uncomfortable in their body. They may have issues that have not been resolved. Maybe they've had some trauma that needs to be worked through. And so that's part of the reason why you wait until they're of an age that they can process the long-term consequences of what their decisions might be. Doctors aren't always right on things. And so I'm looking forward 10 or 20 or 30 years when people are asking, why didn't somebody stop these doctors from sterilizing 10-year-olds? And that's what we're doing. We're going to prevent that future harm and still allow a pathway once a child becomes old enough to understand the consequences of their decision to be able to make those choices. And that age is 16.